나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. I hope this podcast finds you healthy and secure. Today, I wanted to do something a little different in that we've done a lot. I mean, we went through the entire Gosho collection of Nichiren, the Bodhisattva, the great teacher of the shogunate era Buddhism in Japan. And Nichiren spends a great amount of time discussing other schools of Buddhism and how, with simple, straightforward references to the teachers before him, all the way to Shakyamuni, all the answers and all the corrections, in essence, are from the scholarship of Buddhism. He didn't. The thing that Nichiren is most credited with, and that we are thankful for his advent, and that he's our example in this day and age for how to practice Buddhism well, is his scholarship, which is what I was just saying. His scholarship stands on the shoulders of the great scholars before him, Dengyo or Saicho, Miao-Lo, Tien-Tai, so forth. But I've noticed in all my years of study and practice that and also because Nichiren is a modern day example, right? And we can't leave out maybe the most important aspect of Nichiren. Not only is he our example because he lives in our time, and we spend a lot of time talking about that in Buddhism, the time and the capacity of the people, but that he understood that for our era, our mind, our developed sense of self and the world, we are very, very objectifying in nature. We are so inundated in things to identify that is actually our mode of communication and realization. We objectify everything. Not that isn't a pre-existing condition of earlier cultures thousands of years old, but in this era of Mappo, in Buddhist terms, we are very, very adhered to our skandhas, our senses, the way that we perceive ourselves and the world around us. We've perfected mirrors. We do selfies. We are so engaged in the feedback loop of knowing truth, proof through our environs rather than looking inward, that Nichiren understood that for us in this modern era, we needed a reflector, something that was so clear in its intent that we wouldn't put our Buddhahood, our self-realization, in the pretty car, the pretty person, the pretty jewelry, the pretty something else. That he had to create something that was such a perfect reflector of our enlightenment, not this, but our mental awareness of our Buddhahood, our highest state, that it dawned on him that the perfect reflector after years of creating several different types of ideas, even one of his first ones with a depiction of the moon in the center of it. He worked out these mandalas. He knew that, people since time like to have objects of worship. But, we don't worship in Buddhism. We penetrate with wisdom. So how could he make a tool, a mandala, that wasn't pictorial so much as informational, that it made our minds work on what we were seeing, how we were seeing it, how we were experiencing it? Because Buddhism is a philosophy of, or a methodology of, self-realization with penetrating knowledge, right? So he creates this mandala, and he works on it over the years. He finally perfects it, and basically down the center of it is the culminating teaching of Shakyamuni and all of its supporting actors in the Lotus Sutra in Japan. And so he makes this mandala of reflection of what we're learning. And what we're learning, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, is about this nature that's fundamental to life. Certainly ours, but to all life, all phenomena, right? So huge kudos to Nichiren for figuring out how to use our own modern minds, kind of weaponize them for learning, right? I shouldn't say weapons, because that's usually associated with destruction. But there is a destruction. The destruction is of our illusions. And as Picasso said, or is often quoted as saying, every act of creation is first an act of destruction. Well, that applies to Buddhism as well. Well said, Picasso. We have to tear down these huge mountains of delusion in order to perceive the fundamental truth of all phenomena, including our own perception, experience, right? We spent a lot of time talking about that, though, and there's a tendency, there we go with tendencies and conditions again, to view Nichiren as the new Buddhism, like he created something new, when in fact Nichiren would rail against that if he heard that. That was never his intent. That was never his mission. That was never what he thought of himself. He was very humble about what he was. But he was incredibly dedicated, determined, resolute in Shakyamuni's teachings to facilitate enlightenment. So he backed up his resolution. He backed up his promulgation of Lotus Sutra Buddhism with all of these hundreds of years of scholarship that enabled him to come to this resolute mind. And one of those characters that we constantly mention, but we talk very little about, is Tien-Tai. And I want to show you a book that is actually 2 books. It comes as 2 volumes. It may come as well. Well, you see the number 1 on this one and number 2 on this one. So I was very starved for information on Tien-Tai as I was practicing Buddhism. It really annoyed me that it was very difficult to find information on Tien-Tai. Certainly not information about when he was born, how long he lived, when he moved, where he put his head down at night. You know, the biographical information. Yawn. I mean, it's somewhat helpful, but it doesn't help you in your practice. When I found these books initially, they were incredibly expensive in North America. But I found a publisher in India, and you won't believe me, but the name of the publisher is Low Price Publications in Delhi, and it says it right there. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus. See, it says originals. Yeah. It says originals, and then it says an imprint of low price publications, Delhi 110052. Anyway, I think I found these for less than $20, if memory serves. I love the picture too. I think that's an excellent depiction of Shakyamuni. The Profound Meaning of the Lotus Sutra is an amazing book. It really, the author, what's her name? She is presently teaching Department of Philosophy, Shanghai University, Shanghai, China. She obtained PhD degree, Oriental Languages, Cultures, Ghent University in Belgium. She went Asian Studies, University of California, Santa Barbara. Oh, that's amazing. I spent a lot of time at that school, UC Santa Barbara. They have a great religion department, really a ton of books. I found out about the 6 followers of Nichiren and how everyone reduces them down to 5 because one went his own way before Nichiren died, and a lot of deep background on the nature of Nichiren and the invention by about 300 years after Nichiren's death of this Dai Gohanzen that Nichiren Shoshu claims it never existed in Nichiren's time, and it wasn't engraved by Nikko. It was created some 300 years later. Anyway, there's so much history like that in Buddhism that you can get sidetracked with it, but it's also helpful in jarring you loose from the cultish behavior of a lot of groups, right? That's why I'm an independent Buddhist. Chinese language, East China Normal University, Shanghai, China. Contact the author. I'm looking for her name, people. Oh yeah, Hian Shen. Or Haiyan Chen, Haiyan Shen, Shen. Great scholar, and really takes apart a lot. Not just what's handy about this set of books is that she really dissects and translates Tien-Tai's own methodology for how he arrived at his insights into the constructions and the lineage of Buddhism in its entirety, and with specificity on the Lotus Sutra, even down to the brushstrokes of the characters of the title, Myoho Renge Kyo. And I just wanted to read a little bit of his scholarship because I think you will notice right away what is often attributed to Nichiren, because we don't look elsewhere, is actually almost direct quotation of Tien-Tai. Not to take anything away from Nichiren, believe me. I just thought it might be helpful to understand that the scholarship of Buddhism, the Mahayana endeavor, has thousands of years history that we have as our wonderful opportunity today to study Buddhism from such a depth of scholarship that we don't have to just rely on one person. The only person we have to rely on truly is ourselves. But we can build that knowledge, that intuition, that experience on the shoulders of so many great dedicated scholars. To that point, I will mention briefly the Gandhara area of northeastern India, which is now occupied by several countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, other regions of India. There's been some tremendous discoveries there over the last decade or so of early pre-Common Era to Common Era documented scrolls and history and teachings of Buddhism. It was quite the center for a while of Buddhist practice, even called a Buddhist paradise for a while. It's interesting, the geographic location and the timing of it. And a lot of religions pull from that area for the basis of a lot of their thinking, which is interesting because they probably were exposed to and learned a lot of Buddhist thought and reasoning that they then took back into their own respective cultures and interpreted in their own way, like the 18 missing years of Jesus Christ. Anyway, I don't want to make this about world religion, but it's very fascinating what they're finding. And a reminder to those of you who've either experienced or studied in Hinayana or Theravada, they have a very strong claim these days that they say if it wasn't written in Pali, then it's not truly the words of Shakyamuni. Well, the truth of that matter is Shakyamuni taught orally. He never wrote anything down. And he would spend 8, 10, 12 years discussing the same the same period, the same, like going to high school, going to elementary school, then junior high school, then college. It's kind of the way, as an analogy, that he taught this thinking, this experience, and brought people's capacity up so he could then load more onto them for them to figure out, right? And a lot of those early discussions of those first 20, 30 years of his talks, or maybe the first 20, were interpreted within 100 or 200 years after his death and put to writing. But what the early practitioners, which, what they practice today is not correct for this time. So what they practice is nonsense. But, and they wouldn't like to hear me say that, so I apologize if anyone's offended. What I'm trying to get to, though, is that Shakyamuni never taught in Pali. He taught in Prakrit, which was a kind of a universal, simplified Sanskrit. But it was the language of the people. And Shakyamuni was quoted as saying, when asked, that his teaching should be translated in whatever the local language was for those to understand, because the teaching was for them to understand, not for them to... I remember I went through a stage in my practice where I thought, if only I could chant in Sanskrit. What does this sound like in Prakrit? Because I want to say it as he would say it. I mean, that's me. I don't know if any of you are like me, but there's a purist, perfectionist, egomaniac in me that thinks if I'm going to know something, I'm going to know it at its root degree. But Shakyamuni himself said, that's nonsense. Don't do that. You should study in the way that you can understand. So he'd already done his work on telling his students, the words aren't important. They're important as a finger pointing at the moon. If all you do is look at the finger, if all you do is get attached and stuck on the words and how does this mean, what does this mean, how many ways can I interpret what this means, you're missing the entire point. You'll never see the glorious moon because you'll be looking at the finger all the time. You won't learn anything. The point is to get the meaning. It's hard for us to remember that, though. At least it is for someone like me. And the more I searched, oddly enough, the more I got that. Not literally, well, literally because literature, but the more I learned these different ways of looking at the same thing, the more I started to look at the thing instead of the ways of looking at the thing. And so all of that blah, blah, blah is just I want to offer up a few things in this set of books that should make you go, that's Nichiren taught this, but he got it from Tien-Tai, Chih-I, literally. So here. Not so much that one. Since we're talking about the 3,000 realms, right? And I've gone through each of the 10 worlds, and I've talked about the 10 factors and the 3 realms. I thought I would, and to Nichiren's credit, of course, he always references Chih-I about the 3,000 realms in a single moment. But how many of you have investigated the 3,000 realms in a single moment? So that's why I thought maybe a little time would be best, not lost on this. So here we are in the middle of the second volume, and she titles this paragraph, "The Threefold Track Penetrates the Beginning and End." Through the above discussion of opening the coarseness and revealing the subtlety, Chih-I strongly supports his argument concerning the nature of the threefold track as absolutely subtle without any coarseness. As a single Buddha vehicle, the threefold track embodies the ultimate truth. Chih-I's discussion shows that this absoluteness of the threefold track refers to the execution of the Buddha vehicle, representing all Buddha dharmas and incorporating the beginning and end of one's practice of pursuing Buddhahood, including the inherent nature of beings as the cause for attaining Buddhahood and the final attainment of Buddhahood as the effect. There's that cause and effect thing. So Tien-Tai was proposing that the very fact that you're instantiated as a human being is the cause for your enlightenment. That's the raison d'être of human beings. So the question, why am I here? What am I doing? Attaining Buddhahood. Answered. That's the reason you're here. To understand, to experience this magnificent process of phenomenization, if you will, life, this process. This is your opportunity to see it, to understand it, to see yourself as the workings of this magnificent process. Visually speaking, this characteristic of the threefold track, in terms of incorporating the beginning and end of one's practice, can be symbolized by the Buddha vehicle driving freely through the 10 Dharma realms, underworld dwellers, hell, hungry ghosts, hunger, animals, animality, asuras, anger, humans, tranquility, heavenly beings, I always forget this word, rapture, Sravakas, learning, Pratyeka Buddhas, realization, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas, and is regarded by Chih-I as vertical penetration without any hindrance. The characteristics of each of the 10 Dharma realms are reflected in the 10 suchnesses: appearance, nature, substance, power, function, causes, conditions, effects, retributions, and beginning and end, ultimately alike. The 10 factors. Nyose so, nyose in, nyose en, nyose ka, right? According to Chih-I's theory of one mind embracing 3,000 dharmas, 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, Yin Yen Shan Qian, that's the Chinese version, the mind of a single sentient being contains 10 Dharma realms. Why? The 10 Dharma realms are the manifestation of the true reality. Considering that sentient beings originally possess true reality, i.e., the real nature of entities, the 10 Dharma realms that are the manifestation of the true reality are likewise present everywhere. It's as true for a galaxy as it is for you and me, and are contained in the minds of sentient beings. An evil thought belongs to the worlds of hell dwellers, hungry ghosts, and animals. A good thought belongs to the worlds of human and heavenly beings, and a thought of compassion belongs to the realm of the Bodhisattva and the Buddha. Obviously, it would not be possible for different Dharma realms to be manifest if one's mind did not contain all of the 10 Dharma realms. On the one hand, one instant thought includes the whole universe, and one dharma is identical to all dharmas. The interwoven nature of these worlds. On the other hand, the whole universe only exists in every single thought, whereby all dharmas are identical to one dharma. Chih-I's theory is that the reason one's thoughts corresponds to a certain realm at a certain moment signifies that one good thought designates the manifestation of virtue and concealment of evil, and one evil thought the manifestation of evil and concealment of virtue. Good and evil are one entity, and the difference lies in the state between manifestation and concealment. Good and evil transform according to conditions, which is similar to the relationship between ice and water. This indicates that both aspects exist as the one entity, the true reality, which arises in turn with causes and conditions. Chih-I regards the 10 suchnesses that describe the characteristics of the 10 Dharma realms as the beginning of the threefold track, since the 10 suchnesses of each realm can be defined by the threefold track. Suchness of appearance is the external state of being and refers to one's meritorious deeds embodied by the track of accomplishment. Suchness of nature is the internal and unchangeable state of being and belongs to the track of the illumination of wisdom, what Nichiren would call Gohanzon, or Buddha wisdom. Suchness of substance refers to the principal quality that consists of both external and internal states of beings and belongs to the track of real nature. Suchness of power refers to the potential capability the substance is endowed with, which is the understanding cause of Buddhahood, and belongs to the track of the illumination of wisdom, Buddha wisdom. Suchness of function refers to that which constructs and belongs the practice embodied by the track of accomplishment. Suchness of causes is the cause that brings about effect similar to itself, repetitive cause, and belongs to the track of illumination of wisdom. Suchness of conditions, which refers to the indirect or conditional causes, belongs to the track of accomplishment, right? Discovery, enlightenment. Suchness of effects refers to the effects that are the same as their causes. Repetitive effect, Sanskrit, which results from the combination of causes and conditions and belongs to the track of the illumination of wisdom. Suchness of retributions, which is her translation, refers to the effects resulting from the deed one has done in the past, repetitive retribution, and belongs to the track of accomplishment, right? You're dragging along your last moment as you're revisiting it and then applying that experience to the next moment. Suchness of being and end ultimately alike means that the appearance at the very beginning and the retribution or the effect at the end are ultimately different views of the same thing and are converged into the same true reality. all at once, in each moment. This 10th category of suchness functions as the conclusion embracing all dharmas. In addition, according to Chih-I's views, only when one understands that all dharmas contained in the threefold truth of emptiness, provisionality, and the middle way can one penetrate the true reality. Those are the three realms. Remember the three realms? Let me say it again. Emptiness, provisionality, living beings, and the middle way, right? Our environment and all together penetrate the true reality, our accomplishment of enlightenment. The truth of emptiness refers to the wisdom of understanding the empty nature of all dharmas and belongs to the track of the illumination of wisdom. The truth of provisional existence functions as the motivation with which the bodhisattva enters the mundane world to enlightened beings and belongs to the track of accomplishment. The truth of the middle way concerns the principle of all dharmas, which consists of both emptiness and provisionality, and belongs to the track of real nature, Buddhahood. So, I could go on, but I think by now, I know when I first read this, my jaw kind of dropped. And I, for some reason, I had to read this and see it in order to really, really understand, in my mind, this is what I'm constantly reading in Nichiren, and Nichiren didn't invent this, nor did Tien-Tai. But Tien-Tai wrote it down. He wrote it down, he showed this is how Shakyamuni's greatest work functions in our daily lives. This is all about the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra, the culminating teaching of Shakyamuni. In it, all his concepts, all his teachings on Buddhism come together to demonstrate his own enlightenment. This is the teaching of Shakyamuni explaining his own enlightenment, his own attainment of what we call Buddha, this realized aspect of this experience, unencumbered by all the physicality of life, and understanding where it emanates from, how it becomes what it is, including ourselves, Buddhahood. I hope that maybe answers a few questions for you. I started out looking for something he might have said regarding the skandhas, the five consciousness of early Mahayana. But then I found this, and I thought, well, this is useful. I mean, after all, he's specifically talking about the Lotus Sutra, and this, these earlier teachings from Vasubandhu, Nagarjuna, and other great scholars, they were really focused on the earlier teachings of Shakyamuni, teaching to others, trying to elevate their understanding of their own lives and their own experience. Whereas in the Lotus, he's speaking of his own. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I have this persistent little voice in the back of my head that says, the five skandhas are great and all, but really, to somebody in this time period, understanding the 9 consciousnesses, we would have to say that there are actually 9 skandhas. The skandhas work within the scope of the nidana. They're an initial understanding of consciousness. They go well beyond even today, the secular idea of consciousness. We have like 2 definitions, consciousness and subconsciousness. But in Buddhism, we understand there's a lot more going on. And maybe it's a matter of etymologies. How do we interpret the word consciousness? In Buddhism, everything is a nature or a tendency toward, and that tendency is fed by certain energy and and then applies that energy thusly, right? So that's why we see I as consciousness, vision as consciousness, because early on we knew as Buddhists that the I isn't what's seeing. The eye has nerve endings that go to certain parts of the brains that categorizes a limited scope of light and interprets it to be colors and shapes and that kind of thing. And then there's beyond the brain, there's how do we use that information? What do we do with it? How does it emotionally regard in our experience of the world around us? How does it repeat? Where can we apply it? The mind is the subject of Buddhism, and we take that apart as consciousnesses that are manifest in our different ways of experiencing. So vision is one consciousness. Touching, feeling is another consciousness. Taste, another consciousness. Smell, another consciousness. Ears, consciousness. So it's no accident that Nichiren develops this practice of a mandala to out loud invoke Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, uses your tongue, your throat, your lungs, your physicality, as well as capturing your ears and your eyes with the mandala, all these consciousnesses which normally are run by the monkeys, that human survival I am mind. We can subvert those consciousnesses so there's more and more of your mind's attention focused. See, focus isn't just a visual thing, it's a consciousness thing. So when we chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo to mandala, this mandala reflects for that isolated mind its clarity, ultimate clarity. It's Buddha nature, it's Buddha wisdom. And then it accomplishes, in the words of Tien-Tai, this Buddha state, which is, as he just told us, the Bodhisattva way. And so this all comes from Tien-Tai. We can thank Nichiren for pointing to it, but he didn't invent that. This is a feature of Shakyamuni's teaching, elucidated by these great scholars. Thank you, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much. With that kind of spirit, understand why we practice Nichiren scholarship. Because he brings it together. He reminds us that this is what's happening in the Lotus Sutra, that this is how this becomes the one vehicle. Not three, not two, one. The great vehicle. Mahayana. Make sense? All right. I don't know how long that took. That's long enough. I hope you found that useful. And I I just walked right past my plea to you to mention in the comments, should I dig deeper into Vasubandhu and the 5 skandhas? Or should I, maybe more appropriate for our time, dig into the 9 consciousnesses and the Nidana, and how these formations of our consciousnesses, as we know from later and more evolved teachings, are 9 consciousnesses, and focus on that number of consciousnesses and their root and their meaning, rather than taking so many steps back to when there were only the perception of 5. And it's useful in the building of information, how to get from 5 to 7 or 8, depending on what teachings you're studying, and when did it finally become 9, which is the number we've been taught for a long time now, certainly as embraced in the Lotus Sutra, the 9th consciousness being Buddhahood. That was always seen earlier on as something to attain, but it wasn't seen as something innate until the Lotus Sutra, right? So, yeah, maybe I'll call it the 9 skandhas, which would be, yeah, that would be original. I've not seen or heard of that anywhere else. And we'll make that part of our quantum Buddhist realization. And that will set me to task, because I will have to become more scholarly, like my predecessors, obviously, our predecessors, and elaborate on the same things Vasubandhu and Tien-Tai and Nagarjuna were elucidating, but in our terms, for Mappo, for our modern world, our minds, our understanding. And I may do some research and see if anyone else has done something of that type, or maybe it's a fool's errand. I'll let you decide, and you tell me. I'd love some feedback about that, okay? And in the meantime, keep up your practice. You guys are amazing. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for your support, both in watching and downloading the podcasts, if those are useful for you. The Buddhahood podcast, right? And of course, like, subscribe, share. And my patrons, you're so invaluable to me. Thank you. Whether it's on Patreon or singularly, you guys, I don't even know how to express. Thank you so much. Take care of your health. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. And I'll see you in the next one. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo.